everybody joining us. Thank you so much for doing that. We know this is different. Hey, it's different for us. You know, we're used to seeing your faces, and that's a big part of our experience. And we know that, you know, a lot of times within a class session, we have a good amount of little banter going back and forth, and that's what makes it fun, and that's what keeps us working at it. So we're just trying to loosen the shoulders up a little bit, and these big reaches around are very helpful on that. And bringing the arm forward, up, and down, back, and around also. And again, just to partly to loosen up the shoulder, partly to get it to relax. A lot of the reason for this is just to keep as much range of motion as possible. And that, that can become a little bit more of a problem if we get beyond 35 or 36. So roll the shoulders, just loosen them up. And bring them up and hold. Neck is relaxed. Now, once those shoulders come up, relaxing your neck is not the easiest thing to do, but it can be done. So just let those shoulders go down, a little shift one foot to the other, feet apart, probably shoulder width. Keep the shoulders as level as you can, because that way you're controlling the core and, you know, just really concentrating on a little bit of looser leg motion. So as you know, a lot of Swedish Fitness involves stretching. Bring that arm up. Now, as straight overhead as possible, as high as possible with the hand, without really tilting. You know, if you start to tilt to the side, you're going to feel like you're reaching higher. It's probably not really doing that much more in terms of getting the hand higher. But you want to get that full reach. So there's usually always a little bit more, and then bring the arm down slowly. So, you know, opposite arm. And you get that arm raised, and it's like, okay, that's a pretty good stretch. And then try to take it just a little bit more. You can feel that all up along that side in addition to the arm itself. And bring the arm down nice and slowly. Okay. We'll get the feet about shoulder width apart. Slightly toed out. But this is nasty at the beginning of a class. So I'm going to admit that right now. But we're going to get a few squats in. Not deep. Always keeping in mind that you really don't have to think in terms of going the maximum depth on this, but you want to get kind of low enough so that basically approximating the level of a chair seat. And keeping your heels firmly down. You're not rounding over, you're coming downward. So any forward lean is probably minimal. You're not really tipping down forward. Working on those legs. The reason for making sure that the heels are down firmly, just kind of shake those arms out a little bit, loosen the legs up. Reason for the heels being down firmly, that transfers a little bit of the weight more to the back so that your hips are helping with that. It's not all the knees, it's not all the legs. Hips are giving you a lot of help on that. Oh, we probably got to get a little side bending in. So we'll put this one in early in the class. All the weight on one foot. When that arm comes up, if possible, keep it pretty much even with the side of your head. And just into a nice bend. Take the arm down, switch the weight onto the opposite leg. Glancing down toward your foot. And bring the arm down. Just going to swing the arm side to side. Pretty relaxed. Weight is stable on both feet. Now, if we shift the weight, slow the arm swing down. Pretty easy to do. The only difference that it makes with that weight shift from one foot to the other, you're probably reaching out a little bit farther to the side as you do that arm swing. And then shifting the weight, just pretty loose arms, just around the hip. So that same around the hip, bend the knees a little bit, bring the arms up and over. So you're going to run one hip, around the other hip, bending the knees, arms up and over. This shifts us to the opposite side. So around, around, up and over. Around, around, up and over. Around, around, up and over. Around, around, and up and over. So it's kind of sneaking in some pretty small squats, but they're there. So around one hip, around the other hip, bend, one, around the other, and a bend. We probably better get in some standing bicycling. Now, we've not been doing this for a while. You know, we've put it into these classes, but we haven't been doing it regularly like we do in class. So, if you have that chair handy and feel as though it's a good idea to have that little support, by all means pull it in. Other than that, if you have the hands just kind of low against the back, one hand kind of clasping the other. And just starting with that bicycling, relatively large move. We'll do 4 with each leg, so we'll switch. Switch again. So the idea of having the chair handy, and we're switching on every 4 here. The idea of having that chair, you know, don't think of it so much as taking the easy way out, because it's not. What it's doing, when you have that chair handy and you're doing the bicycle, what you're doing is allowing yourself to maintain a very suitable support with that one leg. And, you know, just doing the bicycling, you don't have to switch sides on this with the chair. But if you stop to think, okay, we're strengthening the standing leg. We're trying to stay very kind to the knee and hip joint. If you don't have that support, or if you happen to feel, you know, just a little bit tentative about it, it's going to be less kind to the knee and the hip. So, using the chair for just a little support, don't ever think of it as not doing the job as well, because what you're doing is helping that standing leg. And again, we're just staying with 4. So anytime we have any kind of support involved, anything to steady us, we're just going to shift the weight from one foot to the other, just to stay moving. Arms can move a little bit. Anytime that we have any support involved, there's always there's a little bit of an equation there between, okay, without the support, this is what you're having to do. With the support, you're doing something just a little bit different. When we're sitting especially, and we're not quite ready to do that, we're just going to do some knee lifts here in place. When we're sitting, and we think, you know, okay, keep that upper body very well controlled. If you need a little support from the hands, or if you want to use a little support from the hands, then you put in a certain resistance. So you're not losing anything either way. You're gaining in both cases. Okay, I want to get this chair out of the way again. So, just bring the arm in across. Slight we haven't done bent down over the leg. If we put almost all the weight on that side, bend the knee slowly, take the hands down, come into the center, both knees are bent. So now you're basically coming up from a squat position, down over the opposite leg. Relax the torso, into the center, both arms pretty relaxed. So, first leg, into the center. You're pretty low on that mid portion. So down, in, and up. Down, in, and up. Down, in, and up. One more each side. So make it a little slower. Down, into the center, just let those arms hang, rolling up, and down. Little pause, into the center, and rolling up. Rolling up meaning, as you straighten the knees, then you kind of straighten the body, almost vertebra by vertebra. So it's a gradual straightening with the spine. And then finally, the last thing, the shoulders just kind of settle into place. We're going to bring the feet together. By the way, we are working without music in an attempt to get this whole thing a little bit easier to understand. So I know the music is pretty nice because it keeps us moving and it gives us something to think about. I frequently say, with the music, if it's a song you hate, you're determined to work your way through it. We're just coming up off the heels here while we're doing this arm swing. If it's a song you love, it kind of carries you through the whole thing. And basically, when we're working with music, we don't always think about how hard we're working. So, without the musical accompaniment, you may be a little more aware of what you're doing here. And, but at any rate, that's the reason. We're trying to make it as understandable as possible. So we're going to get a little knee spring here. Remember, the knee spring is bend, straighten, That's a spring. It's done fairly quickly. So a knee spring, and bring the arm back up and over. Knee spring. So that knee spring is not just a bend, it's a bend, straighten, both of them done in pretty rapid succession. So you just think in terms of a spring. It's a big motion with the arm, full circle as it comes around. And one more. And then just to lift up to the top. So not unlike the reach we did earlier, just not quite as, we're not taking it quite as far. Mostly just to keep that shoulder nice and loose. We're going to go back to the knee spring and arm swing. Make it relaxed. One more side. Turn through. So that gives us a pretty good amount of work for the arms. Just take them out to the side. And they're already, they may be a little tired at this point. If we just keep those arms raised out at the side, we can kind of do a little foot roll. That's not going to do one darn thing for the arms, because the arms have already worked. They are now being held in a stationary position, and that's when they fatigue the most rapidly, probably to the greater degree. If we just change up a little bit, just bring the hands in, let them, let one overlap the other. You can notice the difference immediately in the upper portion of the arm. You can still tell that those muscles have been working, but they now feel as though you're at least aware of it, and you're trying to give them a chance to recover. So just bring those arms down and kind of swing them nice and loose and easy. If we step back on a slant and take the arms back, bring them forward across, take them back, a little swish around the hip as you bring that foot in, same thing opposite way. So on a slant, nice long reaches with the arms. Bring the foot in as you do that swish around the hip. Slanting back, bring them forward. Good reach with those arms. Slanting back, bring them forward. Slanting back. And again. Good reach. Arms are very relaxed as you just kind of sweep them around the hip. So you want that really long reach, that second reach back, and then they just kind of wind around the midsection, hands coming around the hips. So just to loosen the shoulders up, because you've done that very long reach. So we'll do it one more time, both sides. Way back, way forward, the weight is shifting. Way back, around the hip. Way back. Maybe we'll do it one more time and concentrate on where the weight is. So the weight, as the arms go back, is on that foot, on that lead foot. As the arms come forward, it's on what becomes the lead foot. Back, and then just bring the foot in. Same thing opposite way. So what becomes your leading foot as the arms swing, and then leading foot as the arms swing the opposite way. Being aware of where the weight is very important, because that's what gives you the opportunity to really reach farther, to make it a more effective reach. And this little weight shift in place, you know, the arms are getting a chance to relax. It's keeping the legs moving, minimally, but moving. So, as you know, in this class, there's very little time when we're doing absolutely nothing. We're always moving something, even if it's very minimal. And that minimal or very easy move gives us a chance, gives the whole body a chance to recover, but it maintains some activity. Okay, start with feet together. We're going to step out to the side, back together, bring the foot in. Out, back together, bring the foot in. Out, in, and out, in, a little tap. Well, no taps. We could do this with taps on the shoes. It would be very impressive. Just out and in. So then you become aware of the body itself, of the torso, and you realize that the weight is always maintaining a straight vertical position, straight vertical posture. So we're not going this way, although we could. And we'll put a little work in for the torso. But mostly and this is primarily for balance purposes, trying to keep, when the weight shifts, trying to keep that solid position. Solid position. And that's for everything that we do. One of the most uncomfortable feelings is if you overextend, or if you step out and suddenly realize, oh, that foot is not holding me, I'm going to have to hold with this one side. And that is so important. Always in terms of trying to think about your center. Think about holding that center and not getting overextended one way or the other. So a lot of these little things that we do, it's always just thinking in terms of being able to come back to that center position and kind of not getting lost, just hanging out there somewhere. We haven't done a whole lot of repetitive knee lifts. So we do 4 and switch. Knee lifts forward across, 4 and 4. Heel lifts to the back, 4. Just straight to the back, and then backward across. So on these, particularly the ones, primarily the ones that have the knee lift, either the knee lift across in front or the heel lift across in back, you have a choice on this. Knee lift across in front, you can shift the weight, put it onto that outbound foot if you wish. Again, it's a trade-off. If you're doing that knee lift across and not transferring the weight, you're holding really solid with that one side. So, one way or the other, this is the 4th one coming up, we're going to switch. This one, probably getting a little more strength on that supporting side. This one, you're getting that whole idea of shifting one side to the other. So you're changing your center. Same thing opposite side. Same thing is going to go for the heel lift across and back. That one, really pretty comfortable and pretty easy to stay very solid on the one side. But again, if you prefer, if it just happens to fall into place and you get to sway side to side, on both the knee lift across in front and the heel lift across and back. Torso awareness, core awareness, try to keep really solid from hip to shoulder so that you don't have a lot of wiggle waggle in the midsection. Wiggle waggles are good. In this particular case, we want to control them pretty well. So just a couple more here. We're going to go through that pattern, this time using just 2 reps on each. So knee lift forward, 2 reps. Knee lift, heel lift back, 2, forward across, 2, back across. Same pattern, arms out. So 2, those are forward. Heel lifts back, 2. Cross in front, 2. Heel lift across behind, 2. One more time through. 2. Across. Heel lift straight back. Heel lift across. Purpose of the arms, one more time through. Purpose of the arms raised outward. Does no different thing for feet and legs. What it does is fatigue the arms. This is the last time, I promise. Across. Reasonably good possibility the arms are getting a little tired. Cross and back, bring those arms down. So that raised arms to the side. You know, upper portion of the arm. Sometimes noticeable in the shoulders, but more probably right here, between elbow and shoulder. And those muscles just get a little bit weary. So they need some good extra circulation through them. Something as simple as just bending the elbows, straightening the elbows, letting the arms swing nice and easy. Okay, before we go to the chairs, which is coming up pretty quick, all the weight on the one side. Bend that knee slowly, take the arms down, go into the center, both knees are bent, arms are hanging, and straightens from lower to upper. Down, in, rolling up. And that rolling up is a perfect definition of what you're doing. One more time. Into the center. Up. And down. Into the center. And up. And here again, probably helpful if you're slightly toed outward. Bring all the weight onto that one leg. Bring the arm up and over. Again, if possible, you want that arm as pretty much directly above the side of your head as you can get it. Bring the arm down. That's not something that you have to do if the shoulder is not happy with that position. You can definitely get a nice side bend, even if the arm is hanging down and you don't have it raised at all. It's just that we're trying to emphasize the stretch up along that side. So with the arm raised, you've already put some stretch into gear, and then with the bend, get a little bit more. Back to place. Same thing, opposite side. And back to place. Just roll the feet a little bit. Kind of shake the arms out. And of course, we all know, when you think about exercising on a chair, it sounds as though it's going to be easier than standing up. It's not. And you all know that just as well as I do. And of course, I've mentioned, we're just going to keep the feet together here and do a couple nice big reaches. I've mentioned before having the experience of doing a class a number of years ago. You know everything I talk about is a number of years ago. When we usually did half an hour standing and then half an hour on the floor on a mat. Those floor exercises were not easy. There was one morning when, because of space limitations, we had to do the second half hour on chairs rather than on the floor. The class was not easy. They found out that exercising on a chair is equally or more difficult than being on the floor. The only difference is you didn't have to get up from the floor. So, bring that chair in. We're just going to get the feet lifting a little bit. So, this is that time when we think about sitting nice and straight. Self-supporting the torso, great. If you feel as though there's just a little bit of a lack there at the mid to lower back, put the hands against the side of the chair legs. It's not going to take anything away. It's just going to make it a little bit different. So always perfectly fine to get those hands along the side of the chair leg. And of course, in the meantime, the upper portion of the leg is starting to fatigue a bit, just because of the number of times that we're doing this. So we're going to just straighten one leg then the other. Just give those legs a chance to loosen up a little bit. Changing the motion is a better rest than stopping. Stopping the motion, just kind of, if I say it just holds those muscles in place, that's not a really good description, but moving them just in a different way, at a different speed, at a different angle. Any one of those changes is a better rest than just coming absolutely still. Okay, we have the feet in here. Let's just slide one foot forward. Keep that foot relaxed. Don't flatten it. That's going to make too extreme stretch over the back of the hip. So you want to be really close to the front of the chair. Just relax the torso. Take those hands down toward the front of the ankle. And pull back up. Same thing opposite side. Keep the foot relaxed. Now, there could be a purpose, really, for flattening the foot, but it's too extreme a stretch over the hip for our purposes. Again, we're switching legs. Down, up. One more time. Down. Relax the torso. Chances are this reach probably goes down a bit farther than the ones we've done up until now, because we've relaxed those muscles and stretched them out a bit and given them a chance to really perform at their very best. The whole idea, again, of flattening or not flattening the foot, keeping the foot relaxed means that as you bend forward and start that stretch, if you can kind of visualize it, it's coming up from the ankle, all the way over the hip, and all the way out to the fingertips. If the foot is flat, we've limited. We've made it almost as though the hip is the fulcrum point. And coming around that, you're trying to stretch one way and the other way. So it's like you have a stationary object here, and you're trying to pull both ways from the middle. Not the most comfortable way to do it. So that's the reason I say relax that foot. We're going to do one more bend down over each leg. Relax the torso. Reach. And come on up. And over the opposite. Foot is relaxed. Torso is relaxed. Good. Reach. Hey, we haven't pulled the sock on yet. So, if you need a little help to get that foot up, get the ankle resting on the opposite knee, use the help. Reach, relax the torso. And pull the sock on. Relax the torso as you reach. Pull the sock on. Relax the torso. And go to the opposite side. Don't be surprised if one foot comes up more easily than the other. Don't be surprised if the reach is easier on one side than it is on the other. So reaching, and pulling on the side. Reaching, pulling on the side. Reaching, pulling on the side. Now that seems pretty easy. It's not quite as easy as it seems, because if you begin to develop any stiffness at the hip, or any possible problem at the knee, it's not the easiest thing to do. So that's why we do those things, to try to maintain as much range of motion as possible. And then, of course, there's bicycling. We'll get the opposite arm going. Purpose of the opposite arm. We're going to do 8. We've done 4 already. Purpose of the opposite arm, or both arms. I think that completes 8. We'll switch over. It puts the abdominal muscles, the muscles along the front of the torso, lower portion especially, puts those muscles in gear. We're going to switch over. So if you're doing this and you don't have the arm included in the movement, it's still going to be a great exercise. And you're going to have to hold pretty tight, shoulder to hip, hip to shoulder, whichever direction we're going here. Certainly a good motion. Just keep the arms idle. Feel the difference in the abdominal muscles. I'm going to do just 4 each side. 8 gets a little bit fatiguing. And of course, if we go beyond 8, it can really get fatiguing. So just 4. Now, sitting nice and straight. Bring both arms forward. Feel the difference in the abdominal muscles. Those arms forward have just caused those muscles to kick in with a little bit more energy. course, we're not going for the total of each of these sets of 4 or each of these sets of 8, because they'd be counting up about now. 4 works out well in terms of number of repetitions because it gives a suitable rest for the leg that has just done the work and doesn't let it get lazy. So just a little bit of recovery time. Just bring those hands down. Relax the back, let the arms hang. That whole idea, again, of having both arms forward, or even just come out to sitting straight, even the one arm forward. What it does is start the motion that would be involved in a crunch or a sit-up. So it just pulls those muscles along the lower portion of the front of the body into gear. It gives us a little bit of an advantage in terms of trying to really solidify the core. All those muscles in the torso that stabilize our position, whether it's a seated position or whether it's when we're standing, they're also very important. We'll get the feet out pretty wide. Taking the hand down, bringing it across, bringing it up, back, and around, and you lean back enough on that movement with the arm up and around that you're almost completely straight at the hip. So opposite hand, bring it across, bring it up and around, lean back, and up to sitting. That lean back, obviously, requires a whole lot of holding with the torso. Coming back up to sitting, just a little movement at the hip relaxes the hip. Reaching, and lean back, and reaching, and lean back. With the legs extended, so feet are pretty wide apart. You're going to lean in with the inner side of the leg. So almost as though, kind of imagine a string at the side of the knee. Bring the knee up. When the foot comes up, it's basically center line, and then back down. 4 of those at a time is really sufficient because anytime we're doing some motion and taking a limb out the maximum distance from the center of the body, that's always going to be a little tougher. And we can build strength and stamina provided we don't push beyond a reasonable number of repetitions. If we begin to go beyond that tolerable number of repetitions, the effect is that that move is not going to be as efficient. It's not going to be quite as good because we're having to work against the fatigue factor. So 4 of these, pretty tolerable. Taking it beyond 4 with each, probably not a whole lot of fun. And it's not so much a matter of, whether this is enjoyable or fun. It's a matter of how productive is this move going to be. So we'll just loosen the legs up a little bit. Figure anything that you're doing, and this probably would not be included because this one is not going to generate a great deal of fatigue. But for instance, we'll keep the feet still. We'll just do little circles with the arms. So you're sitting nice and straight, always remembering that. Little circles with the arms. They're pretty tolerable, at least for a while. Especially if we're trying to keep it an even pace, trying to keep the elbows nice and straight. At some point, and it's going to be different for everybody, because it's going to depend on your particular strength. But at some point, those circles are going to get a little fatiguing. And one or the other arm is probably going to start to drop a little bit, or, you know, just not being quite as vigorous with the circles. Bring those hands in, let the arms relax. So that's the reason for, you know, repetition, but within reason. Because efficiency, effectiveness is going to suffer. We're just doing a few little knee lifts. It's going to suffer in direct relationship with fatigue. So we try to push the muscles to a point where we can feel that they're gaining strength or stamina. But beyond that, we know they're not going to be working as effectively. We know they're not going to be happy. So why push them to that point when we can go back after a little rest, get those arms out again. Actually, if you cross the ankles and just resting on the toes, what you've done now has nothing to do with the arms, but what it does have a whole lot to do with is the way you are supporting the entire body. And you've narrowed your support. Actually, you really decreased it by a whole lot, because now not only are your feet very close together, but you're resting on your tiptoes. Bring the arms down again and just stretch those legs. Just kind of wiggle the feet. So again, that goes back to the kind of stuff we were talking about in the beginning, where you're always trying to be sure that everything is centered. Be sure that it has to do with balance / control. Control of the torso. You don't want to just be really loose and limp and lazy. We'll use the 3 L's. Loose, limp, and lazy. So, you want to be sitting nice and straight. If you think in terms of exercising on a chair as having little or nothing to do with balance, it has everything to do with balance. If you think about balance in terms of holding your center. Otherwise, when we do this, we'd be leaning this way and leaning this way. If we weren't controlling the torso and isolating, well, pretty much isolating the movement to the legs, it would be this kind of, which is not bad, but it's a little bit different work for shoulder to hip. So we kind of want to really think in terms of maintaining that core strength. We've just got the feet flapping a little bit in the breeze here. So, I'm going to sit all the way back. Just raise the feet forward. So, you engage the big muscle on the front of the thigh in order to do this. It's the quadricep that helps you to straighten the knee. And then if you just, you know, alternating, toes down, toes up, a little stretch, a little flex. So, the good thing about this is we're very well supported. We've gone all the way to the back of the chair, so we don't have to work as hard with the muscles in the core. But holding those knees straight, even with a little bit of motion with the feet, again, that's a big muscle on the front of the thigh. And it now is not being nourished with circulation as effectively as it would be. Just bring those feet down and then take them back up. So now, you're getting more muscle juice through there. Pretty easy. But again, it doesn't have to be a super difficult motion. It just has to be motion. Some kind of movement. If we come forward enough, it doesn't have to be all the way to the front, but forward enough so that there's room for your hands behind you. Turn the palms down, press down against that chair seat, and then very slowly and gently turn and look one direction, and then back to the center. Opposite direction, back to the center. Your neck needs to be relaxed. Looking, and coming to the center. Looking, and coming to the center once more each way. Can you do this without the hand placement behind you? Absolutely. That hand placement behind you pretty much locks the shoulders in place and controls the torso. If you're doing this without the hands down, can you do it just as effectively? Of course. But you need to think about it a little bit. And you've all seen, I'm sure, if there is a person who is speaking to someone and they are at one side or the other and say something, a lot of times as that person turns their head, they'll also turn the torso. So that whole idea of keeping the flexibility and range of motion as you turn one side to the other, we know you can do it with the hands behind you. It makes you do that without turning the torso. So looking one direction, holding, good stretch around the neck, pulling into the center, going opposite side, and into the center. So again, does it really make a big difference? Well, now and then, no. But on the other hand, if you form the habit of always pulling that shoulder back, you're going to accomplish the same thing. You're going to see the person over there, but you're going to lose some of the flexibility and range of motion of the neck. So that's what we kind of want to try to hold on to. Let's pull that foot up again, but this time instead of pulling the sock on, just take that very casual pose. Rest the elbow on the side of the knee. You can cradle the opposite foot with your hand. Now, not doing a whole lot, but what we're doing is getting a nice stretch up and around the back and the hip. And setting the foot down, same thing opposite side. And for some of us, it's very easy to get that knee down to the side. For others of us, it is not easy. And for any individual, there's a pretty good chance that one side is going to be more flexible than the other side. Either way, you're still getting that nice stretch. And it's basically coming from pretty much center of the lower back, right out and around that hip and into the upper portion of the leg. So that's a pretty good thing to do, to be able to do. We've got the feet tapping again just a little bit. We're going to just bring the arms forward. So just a little tap with the feet. And arms are just there. They're not doing a doggone thing, except they are. Because when they're still, all those muscles have kicked into gear. And this one again, you're going to feel, that flu shot muscle. That's kind of the one that's holding those arms up. So in prep for fall, bring the arms up to the side, bring them down. We're going to get in a little bit more bicycling here. Now, difference between opposite arm and same arm. If we work with the same arm, you're going to feel some work still in those abdominal muscles. If we pull in the opposite arm, you're going to feel it a little bit differently. It's going to transfer a little bit of that work for the front portion of the torso, but it transfer it a little bit. So, same arm, same leg. Opposite arm. And no arms, bring the knees up little bit. So here, you know, you're going to be an immediate tendency to lean toward the back. If you hold nice and tight, feet are, I don't know, maybe about 3 inches off the floor, not more than that. Just holding in place. So again, little work for the legs. More for the lower portion of the torso, especially the abdominal muscles. And here again, you know, if it's just a bit much, put those hands at the side of the chair. And it's not going to hurt at all. It's going to, you know, transfer a little bit of the workload. That's all. This is going to be easier if you have the knees and feet together. If they're separated, then you have to kind of work one against the other, or at any rate, together is going to be easier. Holding those feet lifted for this length of time. Chances are pretty good there's a little bit of fatigue at the very low back. So just set them down and relax that lower back. So this one, perfectly fine. Get a little bit of a lean forward, a little bit of a lean back. Foot goes down flat. Just kind of plodding along. Some days are like that. Okay. Take that foot out slanting. Relax the torso. Bring the hands down. Yeah, probably very close to the ankle. Maybe even fingertips as far as the instep. And come back up and just switch feet, switch sides. So down. And up. And again, don't be surprised if one side feels freer than the other. And there's a little bit of a difference in how far you can reach. You need to relax the torso. And you know what causes the difference between one side and the other in terms of degree of reach or flexibility, sometimes even in terms of range of motion. Because the stronger side, the more dominant side, just bring that foot up. Just try to keep it there for now. More dominant side, stronger side, usually a little bit less flexibility. Non-dominant side, usually a little more flexible. Not 100% either way. Opposite foot comes up. Bounce the feet, straighten one leg, bounce, straighten. There's a little bit of a bounce. Each count, a little bit faster. Both feet bounce, one foot bounces, the other foot lifts. Tiny bit faster. We're getting toward the end here. Matter of fact, I think we've reached it. Bring the feet forward, just about the lids of the chair leg. Relax the torso, slide the hands down. And pull them up. Forward and up to a nice stretch. When you get those arms up, remember that you're not only reaching with the arms, you're not only stretching the arms upward, but you're trying to lift so that you're sitting nice and straight. And then relax. So the difference being, arms are up, they look the same, body is not necessarily relaxed, but it's not really fully into this. And then you get that little bit of a lift with the entire torso. So you get the stretch not only for the arms, but for the entire back, the entire body. Bring the arms down nice and slowly. We probably need to stand up and just do a couple nice side bends, just to relax the body. So look at that chair out of the way. changing position at all. We're just getting this little bend side to side. And bring the arms down. And then our nice side bend that gives us that nice stretch up along the side. So all the weight on one foot. Just a nice slow bend. Same thing opposite side. And again, if possible, you want that arm as it raises to almost lie along the side of your head. So you want it fairly high in terms of being raised. You want it relaxed. It doesn't need to stiffen, but it's not super bent either. So it's just kind of a nice easy elbow. Up and over. Just bring a big circle. Get across in front of the body. Only reason for having the hand against the thigh is it provides a little resistance, and it probably is easier to stay faced fully forward. So hand against the side, a little bit of a reach, actually quite a big bit of a reach. You can do this also with a little bit of bend and straighten. A little bit of bend and straighten. When you do that bend, it's basically to the side. It's not with much turning the torso. And of course we need this because you, just by being here with us, you have done a great job and you deserve a pat on the back. And we thank you, and we'll see you, well, we'll see you tomorrow morning for Silver and Fit, and then next week for Swedish Fitness.